Welcome to Financial Pathways. I'm Dan Youngs with HFG Financial Group. We are sponsoring this series on business and personal financial matters that are relevant to you today. Over the next number of episodes, we will be bringing in professionals in different areas to talk about financial matters. One of the neat things that we have been able to do is to bring in a gentleman by the name of Tony Wroblewski, best-selling author, public speaker. In each one of our shows, we'll be doing an interview with Tony. If you are a business owner, run a nonprofit, you just will not want to miss the great information that Tony has for you. Today we have with us in the studio a friend of mine, Doug Drenth, a financial professional at HFG Financial Group. Doug and I have worked together for a number of years. Doug, how long have you been in the business?
I've been in the business for about 10 years now. I've seen the market at some highs and also at some lows. And today we want to talk to our viewers about how they would go about starting to save money.
And why it's important to save money. Inflation is such a thing that's in the news today. I'm coming to the office this morning and I see gas at the gas station next door, $3.19 a gallon. You and I were having a conversation the other day and you pulled up some numbers. How much was gas in 1980?
1980, gas was $1.08 a gallon.
And that was the U.S. Census Bureau is reporting that.
That's correct. That was the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. There's a couple other numbers that I looked at. One was a Hershey bar. In 1980, it was 25 cents.
You know, I just bought one for a snack here later today. 75 cents I paid for that.
Wow.
Three times.
3 times the amount.
Why do you think prices are going up like that? Is it just companies wanting to make more money?
No, I think the cost of the goods and services and the labor to produce those goods is forcing the prices to go up.
I was reading an article the other day published by Bloomberg Financial News that back in 1980, the average doctor visit was $15.66. Today, it's $89.63. And it was interesting that not all of that money is going on to the doctor. Everything else is costing more money, from his staff to his insurance to his heat bill. So he has to raise his prices to keep up with things.
That's correct, and it seems like the medical field is one field where things have really escalated in the past 30 years.
But we've seen it in other areas too. Do you have some more numbers there?
We do. Actually, the Dow Jones in 1980, on January 2nd, was 875.85. It closed December 1st of 2010 at 11,577.51. That is quite an increase.
That's big. That is big. You've got a few more numbers for us, Doug?
Yeah, Dan, I looked up some numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. A loaf of bread in 1980 was 50 cents.
I just paid $2.89 a couple of days ago locally here.
Wow, that's a big increase.
That's a lot.
Another thing I looked at was a dozen eggs. Back in 1980, they were 88 cents.
And the Bureau is saying they're how much today?
They're saying $1.80.
Why do you think these prices are going up like this?
I think because the price of farm materials for the farmer, his feed, just the price of what it takes to produce these products has gone up so much. The price of fuel for their tractors, everything that the farmer needs to get those to market has gone up.
All the way through from buying their land, and you're right, you see some of these massive pieces of equipment that these people use. That's not cheap stuff.
No.
And we have to pay for that. It costs us. So it's so important that we think about the future and set some money aside for that.
Imagine what it's going to be in the next 30 years.
I can't. And when you consider that you and I lived through 1980, understood those prices, and we look today, it's almost scary, Doug.
It is.
As to what those things are going to cost 30 years from now.
It really is, and that's why we really need to talk to people today about saving for the future.
To make it important that you set aside some money to take care of those increases. After the short break from our sponsors, Doug and I are going to continue our conversation in more depth on how you go about saving money.
With so many questions, isn't it nice to know you can go to one place for the answers? HFG Financial Group has over 40 years combined experience helping singles and families in Southwest Michigan plan their financial future. Whether you're growing, graduating, chasing a lifelong dream, or retiring, stop by our office in Kalamazoo and meet one of our financial advisors today for a free consultation. We can help make you feel confident in your investments. HFG Financial Group, your beacon to a bright future.
Welcome back to Financial Pathways. I'm Dan Youngs with HFG Financial Group. Here in the studio today, I have Doug Drent, a professional, with us. Doug and I have been talking about inflation, the cost of things rising, in our previous segment, and we're going to continue with that conversation. Doug, what are some things that people ought to be aware of when they're looking at their personal finances?
Well, Dan, the first thing you need to do is find a financial professional to work with.
Being in this business, I started in 1982. I have seen it all. The people who seem to be the most successful for saving for their future are those who have somebody that they know, they like, they trust, that they can work with on a long-term basis. As you know, Doug, our business is extremely complex. It has gotten more complex as time has gone by. And there are so many products, so many different things that people can do with their money. And there's a lot of them that are not appropriate for everybody. And you need somebody to help you sort through that, to pick those right places to go with your money, and to help you plan for that college, for that retirement, for that home purchase. And if you just shoot off the hip, you're probably not going to do it. I've heard that most people spend more time planning their vacation each year than they do planning for their own retirement.
I think also our business is built on relationships, and so it's important to find somebody that you can personally work with that has your same values and looking for the same things that you're going to help them find.
Yeah. When you're thinking about setting aside money for future events, such as college funding, emergency funds, retirement savings, there's really two methods of dealing with that money: ownership versus loanership.
Right. And by loanership, that means you are going to bring your money to the bank and they will give you a fixed rate of return. Let's say that you go to the bank and cash your paycheck and you leave $100 in the bank. They are going to pay you interest on that money, and that's considered loaning them the money.
And I can get at that money pretty much any time I want to. And if I put $100 in there, I'll be able to come back tomorrow and take $100 back out, right?
Right, and that's why this is a low-risk way of setting money aside.
So what we're saying is, first of all, you need to set aside money in an emergency fund.
Right.
Good place, maybe the bank.
Right.
Okay? But then we switch over to the idea of ownership. Doug, is the bank in business to pay you interest? No, they're in business to make a profit for the people who own them. Now, I'm not saying you should own a bank. As a matter of fact, over the past several years, it's been a great place to own. But the concept of owning versus loaning, I use an example, bringing it right down to personal level, your own home. You can be an owner with your home, or you can be a loaner. And when I say loaner, I mean a renter. Neither is right, neither is wrong, just depending on where you're at in life. If you're getting started, you're moving often, renting is a great place to go. You don't have any risk. You sign a 12-month lease. At the end of the 12 months, you pack up your stuff and you move on. During that 12 months, if the hot water heater blows up, you call the landlord, he comes and fixes it. But you don't have anything at the end of that 12 months. On the other hand, you become an owner, which is the American dream, to own your own home. You take on all of the risks of ownership. Your roof goes bad, you replace it. If your hot water goes bad, you replace it. You pay the property taxes, you maintain it, you cut the lawn. But the idea, hopefully, is that that property will appreciate, will give you something in value down the road. Past few years it's been difficult, and of course there's no guarantee that will happen. That's part of the risk of being an owner.
That's why it's very important to work with a financial professional so they can help you find in the ways that's right for you. One way might be to own an individual publicly traded company.
We were talking about the idea of a bank, and I said maybe that's not a place to go, and maybe owning an individual company, maybe you should own a basket of companies. An example might be the Dow Jones Industrial Average. We've got a long history. It's 30 companies that are spread across most industries in the United States to give a sample of what the overall stock market does. I think you've got some statistical returns of the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Yeah, I do, Dan. On January 2nd of 1980, the Dow was at 875.85. December 2nd of 2010, it closed at 11,577.51.
Well, what's that mean for $1,000, Doug?
Dan, if you had invested $1,000 in 1980, you would have $13,220 today.
We could even back that up and say $100 would be worth $1,322.
That's correct.
Now, I'm doing some quick math in my head. That's better than the loaf of bread. That's better than gasoline. That's even better than what the doctor's visit costs.
That's right.
That's a good way to stay ahead of the game. Now, that's not a guarantee that's going to happen in the future. All we're doing is looking at the past and comparing what has happened.
Right.
So, Doug, let me recap our conversation today. Loanership versus ownership. Loanership, putting your paycheck at your bank, emergency fund, low interest, low risk. I put my money in today, I can take it out tomorrow. Not a great return. Ownership, I take a lot more risk. I got to be responsible for a lot more things, but I have the potential for a greater return. Also have the potential for some loss. Important to talk to a financial professional, somebody that can guide you through those waters, whether your money should be setting in a loanership or whether you should maybe consider ownership with your money. I'd like to thank Doug Drenth for being in the studio with us today. It's been a good conversation, good information. I hope the folks learned some things from what we talked about. If you'd like more information, check us out on the web, hfgfinancialgroup.com, or would like to talk to us personally, feel free to call the number on the screen and we'd love to chat with you. After the break, we're going to be back with best-selling author Tony Wroblewski. Tony is national speaker, personal business coach, specializing in working with small business owners and nonprofits to expand what they do, to be better at what they do, to help them increase their business. You can't miss this segment.
With so many questions, isn't it nice to know you can go to one place for the answers? HFG Financial Group has over 40 years combined experience helping singles and families in Southwest Michigan plan their financial future. Whether you're growing, graduating, chasing a lifelong dream, or retiring, stop by our office in Kalamazoo and meet one of our financial advisors today for a free consultation. We can help make you feel confident in your investments. HFG Financial Group, your beacon to a bright future.
Welcome to Financial Pathways. I'm Dan Youngs. Really fortunate today to have best-selling author Tony Wroblewski with us. This is part one in a 5-part series that we're going to do with Tony on marketing promotion of small businesses and nonprofits. Tony is a homegrown boy, Spring Lake resident, graduate of Western Michigan University. Tony, welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on, Dan.
Latest book, Mind Capture. Tony, what do you mean by mind capture?
Well, good question, Dan. Really, I believe everyone's in the marketing game, whether they know it or not. I know we have a wide viewing audience here, and the mind capture is simply the ability to stand out, get attention, and win business in a crowded world. Through the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, for example, I train a lot of nonprofit leaders, and they're coming around to the fact that, hey, we have to get our message out there, and it's very crowded. I argue that if you can't capture people in 1 to 2 seconds, you have a very difficult time. We're in Michigan. This is where we call home. Kalamazoo, Michigan, yes, is my birthplace, and we have seen a lot of economic challenges, more so in our state than many other states. So when I look at this, it's even more imperative, I believe, for everyone to understand, even if you're watching right now, well, I'm not in marketing. I think we all are. Okay, you look at, for example, people that are applying for jobs right now. If they actually get an interview, do you not think that when they're in front of that recruiter, they're trying to sell themselves? Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you're up against 400 or 500 other candidates, when you actually get that sacred time to interview, you've got to be on your best, what I call game face, to sell them or market of why they should choose you. So I really think in this sort of changed economy, there's a big awakening going on. All organizations saying we have to step up and be able to capture people.
Tony, we're kind of focusing on small businesses and nonprofits. You talk to a lot of them. Mm-hmm. And as you said, we're kind of in a difficult area here in Michigan, but there are small businesses that are succeeding. Correct. And are successful. What are they doing differently than maybe some that are struggling?
Well, it's a very good question because a lot of times the media talks about how bad the economy is. And it's almost like this macabre game of how bad things are. However, there are many companies that are doing well, and here's what they're doing differently. Number one, they think differently as far as they're proactive. They don't wait around. They're not buying into all the fear. And essentially they're saying, look, how do we increase our service with our customers? How do we get more referrals? Something I'm sure we'll talk about in future segments. But they're saying, how do we build a better relationship with the customer? See, up to a few years ago, when the business economy was running along and credit was easy, you could almost do well without even really having to market because people were spending money much more aggressively and credit was easy. What happened the last 2 years, the rodeo changed and it got nasty. I'll give you an example where I come up with this. You look at Warren Buffett, someone you're well versed with, Donald Trump. You see them on television, CNBC, and even they're complaining about the last few years. So why I say what's happened the last 2 years is everyone's had to step up. Growing companies say, no, we have to build relationships now. We have to be able to save people time. We have to be able to bundle our products and services better. Some of you that are watching, nonprofit leaders, are going to say, look, we can't just beg people for money anymore. When we're a nonprofit executive director, we have to show value. We have to say, here's where the money's going on the front line. And if not, you're seeing consolidation in the nonprofit world. You're seeing smaller companies that if they don't know how to market and build relationships, they're being gobbled up. And a lot of companies that are growing are finding for pennies on the dollar, they can acquire other companies that weren't good marketers or shouldn't have been in the marketplace to begin with. So to me, it's fun. Most of my top clients are frankly having their best years ever. And they sometimes will bring me in and say, look, we want to keep momentum going. It's not as if I have the magic wand. I've got a few ideas, don't get me wrong. But they're already doing well. So it's fun to be around that. Mindset and relationships are critical and why they're growing.
You know, following right along with that line of thought, the companies that are not succeeding, what are they doing? What could they be doing differently that they aren't doing?
That's a different type of question.
Okay.
I'll give you a couple of thoughts on this. No, it's I like being positive, but you have to look at the pragmatic reality of Michigan and a lot of the global economy. What they do differently, in my assessment, is getting the pulse of all sorts of industries, is there's sort of a retreat fear-based mode. I'll say this to your viewing audience, hope is not a marketing strategy. It's packaged and sold all over the dials, online, radio, television, print. Hope things change. No, you have to proactively think differently, have a strategy, hustle. We're all working harder. I'll give you something fascinating, and I'm going to go off point here so I can come back to your original question, but it seems as if right now successful companies are so super busy they can barely keep up. Or on the other end of the dial, that dovetails into what you're saying, people can't find any work or they're struggling. There seems to be in this economy no middle ground right now. Either companies are really flourishing or those that are really struggling. And it comes back to, again, a lot of the focus, what they're hearing and seeing around them is saying, well, our industry's bad. And they listen to all their competition wallowing and complaining. But at some point, there's one or two people that are the industry leaders in every business that are actually doing well. They do things very differently. Marketing is a major, major initiative. Whoever you're watching right now, I want to say this with strong conviction. The game is up. People will no longer tolerate inferior customer service. In the age of Google, I call it word of mouth. They'll click on and they'll find 10 other options to compete against you if they're not happy. So it presents a conundrum for all of us that are in sales and marketing that we have to keep raising our game. And some companies that, again, get mired in negative thought processes, they listen to all their competition, the negative media that brings them down, they actually sell themselves in the fact that no one's doing well. And that's, to me, a myth.
Yeah, yeah. What do kids know or understand about sales that most of the rest of us don't?
Fascinating question. Being the proud father of 3 children that are 12, 11, and 8, kids have a couple things that all of us adults can learn from. Children have no barriers. They look at everything with what I call fresh eyes. And I'll give you a case study here that's worth noting. It's in the brand new book. It's a story, actually, I tell. It's called Braden's Question. And it was June of last year. It was a beautiful Michigan day. And I remember we're filming this right now in the wintertime. But June was nice. We go out Saturday morning for play a game of soccer in our front yard. And I remember it like yesterday. We're getting ready to walk out there, and I hear my wife yell, "Get Jake." Jake is running down the driveway. Now, Jake is one of our 3 chocolate Labrador retrievers. And I look, and sure enough, there's our dog running down the driveway in our yard. So Braden and I, my little 8-year-old son, go in hot pursuit. And we capture Jake at the edge of the driveway. We walk him back up to the garage. I let him in the house. And I turn around and look at my son. And here's what he says to me point blank. "Dad, how come Jake doesn't wear clothes like we humans do?" And I thought, what did you just say? He goes, "Well, how come the dog doesn't wear clothes like us humans?" And it floored me for a minute, Dan. I thought, first inclination, ask your mother. I have no idea why he asked this. So we go outside in the front yard. We play soccer for about a half an hour, have a great time. We go back in the house. I say, "Braden, run along." And I go in my car and I grab a Post-it note and I wrote that question down. It's called Braden's Question. And here's why I share it with your audience. They get it. They look at everything with fresh eyes. The challenge is when we're adults, we're creatures of what? Habit. Yeah. Okay? Many of our habits serve us well. But when it comes to business, if you become predictable, and I teach this all over the world, if you're too predictable, you become deadly with your marketing from the perspective of the marketplace tunes it out. And you look at children, number one, they have that curiosity factor. The second thing is they're persistent. Tell a child no. They're like, game's just begun, ding, ding. And they'll try every way conceivable to get what they want. Have you ever experienced this?
All the time.
Okay. A great example, because this is more of a local show here, is you take your children to Meijer's and you never let them go to the checkout lane because they will have combat with you in aisle 7. And they'll say, "I want this candy bar, I want this magazine." And you'll tell them no, and you'll try every form of parenting or parental escalation, and they'll still end up walking out with a candy bar. They don't give up easily. In this type of economy, the message is for the audience that's viewing is you're going to have to be tenacious. You're going to hear a lot of no's. You're going to hear people say, "Well, it's not this," and we're going to wait around. And if you believe in what you're marketing, if you're a nonprofit leader, you're a sales representative, if you're a director of a company or a VP, you're going to have to sell with conviction and passion because people are they're a little bit more cautious these days. So children are persistent. And really, I guess the third point about kids that I think everyone can learn from is they ask great questions. Yeah. I go back to the story I told about Braden in our chocolate lab. They ask you questions that just floor you. And what I want people to think about in my trade as marketing and sales is your marketing message is making people stop and question. Okay, this is a show about finances and money and all that good stuff. But people are thinking about that constantly, and a lot of your folks that are out there in the market space say the same thing. Yeah. And the prospect has no clue how to differentiate, or they think, why should I even pay attention to that message? So again, fresh eyes, curiosity, they're very persistent, and they ask great questions.
Again, just really profound. I've heard you say this before you, and I've had this conversation, and it just struck me that fresh eyes, looking at businesses. I also am with business owners who are successful.
Correct.
And that's exactly what I see. And again, one of the things that jumps out at me is the ability not to take no.
Correct.
That's just the starting point is the no. So, thank you. Media, Tony. We live in a world that has just bombarded us with internet, Facebook, television, radio. Why is it important for small business owners and nonprofit people to be aware of the media?
Well, I think it's a great question at a larger level that most people don't realize. 85 to 90%, depending on what sources you go to, let's say 85% minimum, of most media is negative in nature. I'll tell your audience, one reason I agreed to come on your show is I like the fact that it's upbeat. There's a positive message here. And I get interviewed a lot. I've been on Fox Television, CNN, NPR, all the different spectrums. And what's very frustrating to me is how many opportunities I don't get because I don't sit there and say, hey, everything's so bad. The sky is falling. Let's just give up and pack it in. There's a lot of attitude right now that won't report good news that's occurring. And with those numbers being so high, 85% is negative in nature, is it any wonder if we're going to pull out of this economy? I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Tea Party, agnostic, whatever your political view is, if we don't start believing we can turn things around, we're going to have a tough road to go. And it's fascinating when I travel, for example, through airports. And I'll watch people maybe in Detroit Metro watching CNN, or maybe it's Fox. And you can tell they look either frustrated with what they're seeing, or they go, what in the heck is this garbage? So I don't mind saying my philosophy on the media, not that people in the media are all bad. I actually do a lot of work within the media. However, the overall editorial newsrooms are very much negative. They pull off the AP news wires, and it's all homogenized. So when you find a good news story, it's usually at 11:23 on the local news, and it's 60 seconds. But the other 22 minutes was all about the latest car crash, the tragedy, the fool that did something crazy up on campus. And I just don't understand why we talk about all the negativity. So that's my 2 cents. But it does, coming back on why I'm such an advocate that you have to watch it, is it does affect consumer confidence. It does affect that business owner's thought process in many cases, say, should I hire or should I not hire? Let me give an example of why this is big to get. I was reading USA Today a couple months ago. U.S. corporations have $1 trillion sitting in cash. It's sitting on the sidelines. And if you think about it, a lot of confidence, there's a lot of fear out there. They're thinking, well, we're hearing all these mixed signals. Maybe we're just going to wait to hire, wait to expand. That is slowly suffocating the economy. And I think that a lot of your mainstream media, I don't care, again, if it's Fox, CNN, NPR, doesn't matter to me, they are suffocating the economy and actually keeping it at a grinding halt. So hopefully, if someone's watching, what I tell my clients is, don't be ignorant of the media, but try to engage them and say, look, here's some good things, and get that out to them, and hopefully they'll pick it up and report it.
That's all for this episode of Financial Pathways. I'd like to thank our experts at HFG Financial Group, as well as best-selling author Tony Wroblewski. We'll see you next time on Financial Pathways.